My name is Colleen Church. I'm 34 years old, and 3 months ago, I canceled my wedding 7 weeks before it was supposed to happen because my fiancé told me, if you loved me, you'd stop digging into my secrets. I told him, then pack them too. Ethan thought I was bluffing. That was the first thing that truly scared me. Not the hidden bills, not the fraud alert, not even the realization that the man I planned to marry had quietly used my identity behind my back. The worst part was how certain he was that I would stay anyway. We had been together a little over 3 years, engaged for 11 months, living in my condo in Raleigh for 9 months. I worked in IT project management for a hospital system. Ethan worked as an event coordinator for a cosmetic dental group, and honestly, his entire life revolved around making things look polished from the outside. From the outside, we looked perfect too. Engagement photos done, venue paid, registry half built, honeymoon reserved. Friends constantly called us stable. But inside the relationship, there was always this strange fog around certain parts of Ethan's life. He called it privacy. I called it one of his quirks, because that felt easier than admitting something deeper felt wrong. He hated direct questions about money. If a package showed up, it was for work, for a client, or just temporary. If I noticed a weird charge, there was always an explanation ready. Nothing ever exploded into a huge fight because nothing was ever fully clear enough to confront. That worked until the evidence started arriving at my own address. The Friday everything collapsed, our office network was down waiting on a vendor patch, so I worked from home. During the downtime, I started gathering paperwork for my mortgage renewal. I opened the kitchen junk drawer looking for a notary receipt and found a stack of envelopes rubber-banded together. 2 were addressed to Ethan. 1 was from a storage facility 20 minutes away. Final notice. I just stood there staring at it because Ethan had never mentioned a storage unit. Not once. I told myself maybe it was old, maybe meaningless, maybe I was overthinking things again. Then my phone buzzed. Credit monitoring alert. New inquiry detected. The application showed my full name, my address, my employer, and the last 4 digits of my social security number. The co-applicant was Ethan Mercer. My stomach dropped so hard it physically hurt. I called the fraud line immediately. While I waited on hold, I looked through the papers again. I didn't open his mail, but I could see enough. Bridal boutique late notices, card statements, and underneath them, folded carefully like he never expected me to find it, a refinance quote for my condo, with my salary typed neatly across the top. That was the moment my hands started shaking. Ethan had access to our wedding spreadsheet because I built it myself on a shared drive. He knew exactly which deposits were non-refundable, which deadlines were approaching, which vendor contracts locked after certain dates. So when he later said he planned to fix it before the wedding, all I heard was this. He knew exactly how long he could hide things before my finances, my home, and my legal name became impossible to separate from his. Ethan came home around noon, carrying iced coffee, talking before the front door fully closed. I cut straight through it. Why is there a storage unit bill in the drawer? And why is my credit attached to a financing application with your name on it? He froze for one beat. Then came the offense. Why were you going through my things? That was always his move whenever reality cornered him. Make the question feel more offensive than the answer. I asked him directly if he had used my information without permission. He rolled his eyes like I was embarrassing him. It's not a big deal, Colleen. I was going to fix it before the wedding. The storage unit was temporary. The financing application was for furniture. Everything had a clean explanation prepared in advance. I asked again. Did you use my information without asking me? He slowly set the coffee down, crossed his arms, and said in this perfectly calm voice that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it, "If you loved me, you'd stop digging into my secrets." Something inside me snapped clean in half. I looked at him and said, "Then pack them too." He laughed. Actually laughed, like this was one more fight that would end with me exhausted and apologizing for upsetting him. So I told him the wedding was canceled. I told him I'd frozen my credit. I told him he needed to be out by the end of the weekend. That was when his face finally changed. Not ashamed. Not guilty. Panicked. The next few hours hurt more than I expected. Not because of the screaming. Because of the cancellations. Hearing the venue coordinator gently ask if I wanted to postpone instead of cancel. Hearing myself say the word cancel out loud. Losing the $2,400 deposit instantly. Watching refund emails come through while realizing every receipt represented a future that no longer existed. Photographer partially refunded us. Florist kept the holding fee. Honeymoon canceled. Chair rentals canceled. Custom cookies canceled. Every phone call felt like peeling another layer off my life. Ethan followed me around the condo while I made the calls, cycling between anger, tears, and outrage so quickly it gave me emotional whiplash. "You're humiliating me. You're throwing away our future over paperwork. You always need control." Not once did he say, "I'm sorry for using your information." That silence mattered more than everything else. Around evening, his friend Celeste arrived, already prepared for battle. Ethan had apparently told her I was having some kind of emotional breakdown and punishing him over wedding stress. Celeste used that fake calm tone people use when they think they're talking to someone unstable. "Colleen, maybe you should breathe before you ruin both your lives." I didn't argue. I just kept canceling vendors. Around midnight, I changed every password connected to my email, mortgage portal, utilities, streaming services, and wedding folder. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I moved my passport, spare checks, and backup keys into my office safe. Ethan locked himself inside the guest room, making phone calls through the wall, retelling the story without the fraud, without the storage unit, without my name attached to financing paperwork. The next morning, he left with Celeste and 3 oversized duffel bags. At the door, he stopped and looked back at me. "You're going to regret humiliating me like this." I said, "Maybe, but I'd regret marrying you more." The door closed behind him. And for the first time in months, the silence inside my condo didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest. I made it about 36 hours before the messages started. By Sunday evening, I had texts from unknown numbers, from Celeste and from 2 of Ethan's friends I'd met maybe twice. The theme was always the same. Ethan was devastated. Ethan was embarrassed. Ethan was willing to forgive my overreaction if I would just sit down and talk to him calmly. "Forgive me." That part almost made me laugh. I replied to Celeste once and only once. "Your friend used my personal information without permission. There is nothing left to discuss." After that, I stopped answering. Instead, I pulled my full credit reports and started building a folder. 2 hard inquiries I never approved: the furniture financing company and a luxury retail card, both recent. I printed fraud reference numbers, freeze confirmations, vendor cancellation receipts, screenshots of every text Ethan sent me. By Monday evening, I got home from work and found our building manager, Marcus, waiting near the mailboxes. "Everything okay in your unit?" he asked carefully. The second he said it, I already knew. "Ethan." Marcus explained a man had been downstairs almost an hour, insisting I locked him out of our home. Apparently, Ethan left before Marcus called me because another resident walked through and recognized me as the condo owner. The moment I explained there was a fraud issue involved, Marcus's expression changed completely. "If he comes back," he said, "I'll call you first and security second." That same night, Ethan texted me from a new number, asking if I had really changed the garage code. I replied once, "Yes, do not enter the building again without permission." Then came the explanations. The storage unit supposedly held wedding decorations and keepsakes. The financing account was supposedly just to see what we qualified for. He claimed I was rigid about money, and he was only trying to make our future beautiful. He said he hid things because I would never understand pressure the way he did. Not once did he acknowledge what he actually did. Then came the fake emergency. Around 10:30 that night, Celeste called crying so hard I could barely understand her. She claimed Ethan had collapsed outside my building from stress and was asking for me. I went downstairs because I wanted witnesses. Ethan was sitting on the curb near the side entrance, wrapped in a blanket, makeup-perfect tears on his face, breathing completely fine. Marcus was already standing nearby, watching the performance with visible exhaustion. I took one look at Ethan and called 911. The transformation was immediate. He sat upright and hissed, "Don't do that!" Too late. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Pulse normal, oxygen normal, no transport needed. Marcus informed Ethan he needed to leave the property immediately. Celeste called me heartless. I said if it was real, he needed medical help. If it wasn't, he needed to stop staging scenes outside my condo. The next morning, Ethan's mother called me. I expected screaming. Instead, Denise sounded tired. Not angry. Tired. I explained everything. The hidden storage unit, the unauthorized financing applications, the refinance quote using my salary, the canceled wedding. There was a long silence on the phone before she finally said quietly, "He did something similar at 22 with a store card. We thought he grew out of it." That sentence changed something in me. Because suddenly, this wasn't panic. It wasn't stress. It wasn't wedding pressure. It was a pattern. Denise also told me Ethan had been asking her for money while claiming I approved extra wedding expenses before becoming controlling. Then she forwarded screenshots proving it. I added those to the folder too. That night, I packed the rest of Ethan's belongings into boxes. Clothes, shoes, cologne, a ring light, framed prints, expensive skincare products still unopened. I labeled everything carefully and stacked the boxes in the spare room. Then I spent almost 3 hours inventorying what belonged to me versus what belonged to him. That part hurt in a completely different way. Kitchen appliances I bought. Condo furniture I bought. Wedding payments from my checking account. Tiny decorative items from Ethan scattered everywhere, like evidence of a life I almost merged completely with his. And hidden among all of it, paperwork with my name attached to debts I never agreed to. By the end of the week, I finally started sleeping again. Not well, but enough to notice how peaceful the condo felt without secrets vibrating inside the walls. Then things escalated again. The fraud department confirmed the financing application used my full legal information, employer details, and income. That was enough for me to file a police report. The officer warned me identity misuse between partners gets messy fast, but documentation mattered. Meanwhile, Ethan started rewriting history publicly. First, he sent me a Venmo request for $48.60, labeled Reimbursement for Wedding Contributions. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before laughing out loud. He paid for dress alterations and a custom welcome sign. That was basically it. I declined the request and replied with one sentence. "We are not discussing money through an app." 10 minutes later, my older sister Natalie texted me asking why Ethan was telling relatives I kicked him out after he questioned my temper issues. I sent her screenshots, fraud alerts, the text where he told me to stop digging into his secrets. Natalie replied almost immediately, "He's bold, I'll give him that." Then she blocked him and started correcting relatives before the story spread further. A few days later, Ethan appeared in my office lobby. Reception called upstairs saying someone left a private envelope for me. I opened it in front of my coworker Ryan and photographed everything before touching another page. Inside were 2 prints from our engagement shoot and a handwritten note. "You ruined our future because you couldn't mind your business." That sentence sat in my chest like ice. Not because it hurt, because he genuinely believed it. Then came the hospital lie. Late Thursday night, Celeste texted saying Ethan was in the ER with chest pain, asking for me. I ignored it. 20 minutes later, Denise texted, apologizing because Ethan wasn't in any hospital at all. He was apparently at a salon appointment. Denise ended her message with one sentence I still think about constantly. "Please don't marry potential." A week later, I went to dinner with Daniel Reyes, a data analyst I met during a software rollout at work. We had gotten coffee twice before. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed. He was calm in a way that felt unfamiliar after years with Ethan. Halfway through appetizers, Daniel glanced toward the restaurant window. "Do you know that guy outside?" My stomach dropped before I even turned around. Ethan was standing across the street, staring through the glass directly at us. Daniel stayed calm. I asked the server for the manager and stood up slowly. Before I reached the door, Ethan walked inside. Loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, he said, "So this is why you destroyed our wedding." Every head in the room turned toward us. Daniel stayed seated while Ethan marched toward our table like he was entering a stage. His eyes were locked on me, but the performance was for everyone else in the restaurant. "You replaced me fast," he said loudly. "Guess the wedding deposits weren't the only thing you wanted to get rid of." I stood up slowly. "Ethan, leave." He laughed and pointed at Daniel. "You should ask her what kind of woman throws her fiancé out over stress." The manager arrived before I could answer. I calmly explained Ethan was my ex-fiancé and he was harassing me. Security moved in immediately. Ethan backed toward the door, still talking loudly enough for strangers to hear. "You think finding one secret lets you erase me?" But it wasn't one secret anymore. It was fraud, manipulation, stalking, lies. And deep down, he knew it too. 2 nights later, he left me a voicemail in this strangely calm voice. "I know when you're home, because your office light turns on around 7. That was it. No yelling, no threat, just enough to let me know he'd been outside my condo, watching. Monday morning, I filed for a temporary protective order. By then, my folder had everything. Fraud reports, vendor cancellations, police documentation, building incident notes, office security reports, Denise's screenshots, the restaurant complaint, the voicemail transcript. The hearing happened 2 weeks later. There's something surreal about reducing a broken engagement into paperwork. In court, heartbreak becomes timelines, evidence, dates, and documented behavior. I wore the navy dress I originally bought for our rehearsal dinner. Ethan arrived in pale gray, with a lawyer and that softened expression he used whenever he wanted to look fragile instead of manipulative. His lawyer argued emotions were high, the breakup was abrupt, and Ethan was only trying to repair communication. The financing applications were described as misunderstandings tied to future marital plans. Then the judge started reading the evidence. Credit inquiries, fraud affidavits, workplace incidents, Denise's screenshots. Finally, the voicemail. "I know when you're home, because your office light turns on around 7. The judge read that line twice. Then he looked directly at Ethan and asked one question. "Did you use her information without permission?" Ethan tried to explain, tried to soften it, tried to turn it into love. But the judge interrupted him. "Did she give permission?"
Silence.
That silence destroyed him more effectively than any argument I could have made. The protective order was extended for 1 year. No direct contact, no indirect contact through friends, no showing up at my home or workplace. He got 1 supervised pickup window for the rest of his belongings. That was it. Outside the courtroom, Denise touched my arm gently. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. She looked sad, but not confused anymore. Just tired. A week later, the final boxes were gone. No dramatic speech, no tears, no final performance in the hallway. Just a cart, some boxes, and the end of it. Life got smaller after that.
And better.
I repainted the spare room, donated unopened wedding favors, shredded the seating chart 1 strip at a time. A month later, I got promoted to senior project lead. My boss told me I became sharper under pressure. What I didn't tell him was this: it's easy to think clearly when you're no longer living inside someone else's confusion. Daniel and I are still seeing each other. Slowly. Normally. Peacefully. And the condo finally feels like mine again. The junk drawer has batteries, takeout menus, and pens that barely work. Exactly what a junk drawer is supposed to hold. Not secrets.